I never meant to leave my voice recorder running. My hand trembled as I held the small device, replaying their laughter for the third time. They'd spent 40 minutes discussing how to get rid of me, my own brother leading the charge. The words still rang in my ears as I sat alone in my home office, surrounded by photos of people I thought loved me. I stood up, walked to the shelf, and methodically turned each frame face down. My wife's voice cut through the silence again. Ryan isn't going to notice if we do it right. He never notices anything unless it's on a screen. More laughter. My brother's voice. Trust me, I've been managing him my whole life. These were the people I'd trusted completely, my wife Elena, my brother Jack, and Elena's parents who had welcomed me into their family 8 years ago. Or so I thought. I'd accidentally left my recorder running during our family dinner last night after using it to take notes for work. When I picked it up this morning, the battery was nearly dead, and the memory almost full. I almost deleted the file without listening. Almost. Instead, I heard them planning my professional and personal downfall. The job in Denver that Elena had been encouraging me to apply for? A setup to get me out of the way while they restructured the family business investments I'd helped build, but that were all in Elena's name for tax purposes. I looked at my watch. They'd be here in 30 minutes for our weekly Sunday brunch. I pocketed the recorder and opened my laptop. There was work to do. Ryan. Elena called from the hallway. The front door closed as the rest of them filed in. We brought those pastries you like from Mueller's. Her voice carried that same warmth that had once made me feel lucky. Now it just made me feel sick. I emerged from my office with a pleasant smile that cost me every ounce of self-control. Great. I'm starving. I kissed her cheek mechanically and nodded to her parents, Martha and George. Jack gave me his usual brotherly punch on the shoulder. How's the tech genius today? He asked with that familiar grin. The same grin I'd heard through the recorder when he'd said, Ryan's convenient to have around. But let's be honest, he's just a stepping stone. I maintained my smile. Actually, I just fixed something really interesting. Wanna see? Jack looked bored already but said, Sure, bro. I led them all into the dining room where brunch was set up. My laptop sat open at the head of the table. I was having trouble with some audio files, I said casually, setting my phone next to the computer. But I managed to clean them up. Elena was arranging food on plates. That's nice, honey. Maybe we can talk about the Denver application later? The deadline's Friday. I nodded. Actually, that's related to what I wanted to show you all. I tapped a key on my laptop. I've been thinking a lot about our future moves. The recording began to play through my connected speakers. At first, they looked confused. Then Elena's voice filled the room. Ryan has no idea how much his precious tech skills are worth. George can get triple his salary for the proprietary code he developed. The color drained from her face. Martha dropped a pastry. George straightened up, eyes darting between me and the laptop. Only Jack maintained his composure, though a muscle twitched in his jaw. I paused the playback. There's about 40 minutes more. Should I continue, or do you get the idea? Ryan, you're taking that completely out of context, Elena stammered, moving toward me. I held up my hand. Don't. The word came out sharper than I expected. I've already made copies. Multiple copies. In multiple locations. Jack stepped forward. Look, bro, we were just talking options. Nothing's decided. I laughed, a hollow sound I barely recognized as my own. Options? Like the option of sending me to Denver while you liquidate my investments without my knowledge? Or the option of George selling my proprietary algorithms that I developed outside of company property? I looked at my brother. Or your option of managing me my whole life? The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Elena tried a different approach, her eyes softening. Ryan, please, we need to talk about this calmly. As a family. Family. I zoomed in on a document on my laptop screen. Is that why all the investments we made together are solely in your name? Is that why there's a clause in our prenup that specifically excludes intellectual property developed during our marriage from being considered marital assets? Her parents exchanged looks. They hadn't known about that last part. Good. How long have you been planning this? I asked, looking at each of them. How long have I been the joke at the dinner table? No one answered. The silence was confirmation enough. Ryan, son, George finally spoke, using his firm business tone. Let's all take a breath here. There are misunderstandings. There's no misunderstanding a 40-minute conversation about how to best exploit someone who trusts you. I cut him off. And I'm not your son. Elena was crying now, but I felt nothing watching her tears. They seemed as calculated as everything else had been. I closed my laptop and picked up my phone. I've already spoken with a lawyer this morning. I've also submitted reports to the ethics board about George's proposed sale of my intellectual property. I looked at Jack. And I've emailed Dad about your plans to restructure the family investments without consulting him. That hit a nerve. Jack's face went from controlled to panicked in an instant. You did what? You're not the only one who knows how to manage people, brother. I walked to the door, feeling strangely calm. The initial shock had worn off, replaced by a cold clarity I'd never experienced before. At the threshold, I turned back to look at them, these strangers wearing familiar faces. I won't be going to Denver, I said simply. And I won't be at brunch next Sunday. Or any Sunday. The recorder sat heavy in my pocket as I drove to work Monday morning. I hadn't gone home last night, choosing instead to check into a hotel downtown. Elena had called 27 times. Jack, 16. I'd answered none of them. My colleague Mitch looked up as I entered our shared office space at the tech firm where we both worked. Rough weekend? He asked, noting my appearance. You could say that. I set my bag down and handed him a flash drive. I need your help with something. Mitch had been my only real friend since college. We'd started at the company together, and I trusted him, perhaps the only person I still did trust. After I explained the situation, showing him parts of the recording, he let out a low whistle. Man, that's cold. What do you need me to do? I need to protect my work, I said. And I need someone to know what's happening in case they try something else. He nodded solemnly. Consider it done. And, Ryan, you can crash at my place if you need to. Spare room's yours as long as you want it. For the first time since hearing the recording, I felt something crack in my carefully maintained composure. Thanks, I managed to say. Throughout the day, messages continued to pour in. Elena's sister Kate, the only one in her family I'd ever truly connected with, sent a text. I need to talk to you. It's not what you think. I stared at it for a long time before responding. What is it then? Her reply came quickly. Not all of us were in on it. Can we meet? I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop after work. Part of me wondered if this was another trap, but I needed to know if there was anyone from my old life I could still trust. Kate was already waiting when I arrived, looking nervous but determined. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat down across from her. Why are you here, Kate? She took a deep breath. I've known about some of their plans for a few months. Not everything, but enough. I tried to talk Elena out of it, told her she was making a horrible mistake. And yet you never told me. Kate looked down. I should have. I told myself it was family loyalty, but really, I was just a coward. She pushed a folder across the table. These are copies of emails between Elena, Jack, and my father. I think you should have them. I didn't touch the folder. Why now? Because what they're doing is wrong, she said simply. And because you've always been good to me. Better than my own sister sometimes. I finally took the folder and opened it. The emails confirmed everything I'd heard on the recording and revealed even more. Plans going back nearly 2 years. The Denver job was just the final phase. There's something else, Kate said quietly. They've started transferring assets already. I work at the bank, remember? I saw the transfers come through last week. My stomach dropped. Before I even heard the recording. She nodded. They were moving forward regardless of whether you took the Denver job or not. That was just the easiest scenario for them. Back at Mitch's apartment that evening, I spread everything out on his dining table, the emails from Kate, my own financial records, printouts of my work contracts, and a legal pad full of notes from my conversation with the lawyer. You need to go nuclear, Mitch said after reviewing it all. They've already started. You can't afford to wait. I nodded, the weight of what I had to do settling on my shoulders. I know. My phone buzzed with another call from Elena. This time, I answered and put it on speaker. Ryan, finally. Where are you? We need to talk about this. There's nothing to talk about, I interrupted. I know about the asset transfers. A pause. What asset transfers? Don't insult me by continuing to lie, I said calmly. I have copies of the transfer authorizations. Kate gave them to me. Another pause, longer this time. When Elena spoke again, her voice had changed. The pretense of concern was gone, replaced by something harder. You should have just taken the Denver job, Ryan. This could have been easy. For who? For everyone. You would have had a fresh start with a great salary. We would have handled things back here. Everyone wins. I laughed bitterly. Except I lose everything I've worked for. You were never going to lose everything, she said, sounding almost reasonable. We were going to give you a fair settlement. Defined by who? You? Jack? Your father. She sighed. Ryan, be practical. You're outnumbered and outmaneuvered. The transfers have already started. The intellectual property claims are complex at best. Just take what we're offering and move on. I looked at Mitch, who was shaking his head in disbelief at what he was hearing. I'll see you in court, I said and hung up. Over the next 2 weeks, I executed my counter-strategy with methodical precision. Every line of code I'd ever written for personal projects had been timestamped and digitally notarized years ago, a paranoid habit that was now paying off. I filed formal complaints with the state licensing board about Georgia's ethical violations. I moved every asset I could still access into secure accounts. Elena filed for divorce, claiming irreconcilable differences and requesting an expedited process. Her lawyers delivered proposals that would have left me with roughly 20% of what was rightfully mine. I declined. Jack tried a different approach, showing up at Mitch's apartment one evening. "How did you find me?" I asked, not inviting him in. "Does it matter?" He leaned against the doorframe. "Look, this has gotten out of hand. We can still fix this. Why would I want to fix something with people who were planning to betray me?" He had the decency to look uncomfortable. "It wasn't personal, Ryan. It was business. It was my life," I countered. "My work. My marriage. My brother. How is that not personal?" Jack ran a hand through his hair. "Okay, I deserve that. But think about what you're doing. Dad's furious. The family's being torn apart. Is that really what you want?" I studied him. This person I'd grown up with, shared a room with, confided in for decades. "What I want," I said slowly, "is to have a family I can trust. Since that's not possible, I'll settle for justice." "Don't be dramatic. I have another recording." I cut him off. The lie came easily. From 2 months ago. You and Dad in his study, discussing the family trust. Want me to play it for you? His expression told me everything. There had been such a conversation, and whatever they discussed would devastate our father if revealed. "You're bluffing," he said, but without conviction. I pulled out my phone. "Shall we find out?" He backed away. "This isn't over. For once, brother, we agree on something." The preliminary hearing for the divorce was scheduled for a Thursday morning. I arrived early with my lawyer, a shark in an expensive suit who had listened to the recordings and seen the evidence with barely concealed glee. "They fucked with the wrong tech guy," he'd said appreciatively. Elena and her legal team were already there, along with George and Martha. Jack arrived moments later, avoiding my gaze. As we filed into the courtroom, Kate slipped in and sat directly behind me, a small gesture of support that meant more than she could know. What followed was clinical and precise. My lawyer presented the recordings, the email evidence, the financial transfers, and the intellectual property documentation. Elena's lawyers tried to object to the recording, claiming it was obtained without consent, but in our state, single-party consent was legal for recordings. During a brief recess, Elena approached me in the hallway. She looked both angry and somehow wounded, as if I were the one who had betrayed her. "You didn't have to do this," she said quietly. "You didn't have to humiliate us." I looked at her. Really looked at her, trying to find any trace of the woman I'd fallen in love with. "I'm not the one who spent months plotting to strip someone of everything they've worked for." "It wasn't everything," she insisted. "And we were going to take care of you. Like a pet? Or a child. I was your husband, Elena. Your partner." She looked away. "You were never really one of us, Ryan. You know that. You've always known that." The truth of her words stung more than I wanted to admit. I had always felt like an outsider in their wealthy, connected family with their private jokes and shared history. But I'd thought Elena was different, that we had created our own circle where those differences didn't matter. "You're right," I said finally. "And that's the only thing I thank you for, helping me see it clearly." The judge ordered all transfers reversed pending final settlement and placed a hold on all disputed intellectual property. It was a preliminary victory, but an important one. As we left the courthouse, reporters who had somehow gotten wind of the case, involving a prominent business family and significant tech assets, shouted questions. My lawyer handled them smoothly while I walked to my car, Kate keeping pace beside me. "What now?" she asked. "Now we wait for the next hearing. And I start rebuilding." She nodded. "Ryan, I'm sorry. For all of it." I stopped at my car door. Why didn't they ever accept me? Really? Kate considered this. "I think they never thought you fit their plan. They saw your skills, your potential, but you were always meant to be a tool, not a member." She shook her head. "It's how they operate. It's how they've always operated." "Even Elena?" "Especially Elena. She was raised to identify assets and acquire them." Kate's expression softened. but I think she did love you in her way. Just not enough to choose you over family. I absorbed this. And you? Where do you fit in their plan? I don't, she admitted. I'm the disappointment who works at a bank instead of the family business. The one who married a teacher instead of a strategic connection. She smiled wryly. Maybe that's why I always liked you. We were both outsiders. 3 months later, I sat in my new apartment, surrounded by moving boxes. The divorce had been finalized with terms significantly more favorable than Elena's initial offer. I'd retained ownership of all my intellectual property and received fair compensation for the investments. Most importantly, I was free. My phone chimed with a message from Mitch, position confirmed. Seattle team wants you to start next month. You're officially their problem now. I smiled. The job across the country had been my idea this time, a fresh start at a competitor firm that had been trying to recruit me for years. Mitch was coming too. We'd been hired as a package deal. Another message arrived, this one from Kate. Heard the news. Proud of you. Dinner before you go? I replied affirmatively, grateful for the one relationship from my old life worth preserving. My recorder sat on the desk, a reminder of how quickly everything had changed. I picked it up, turning it over in my hand, and then deleted all the files. I didn't need them anymore. The final box to pack contained the few photos I'd decided to keep. Not of Elena or her family, but of places we'd visited, experiences I didn't want to erase despite who I'd shared them with. As I wrapped them carefully, I realized I no longer felt the burning anger that had fueled me these past months. Instead, there was something quieter, resolution. They had tried to reduce me to a stepping stone in their plans, but instead, they had inadvertently freed me. The recorder had captured their true voices, but it had also, finally, allowed me to find my own. Was I wrong to expose them all, or should I have quietly walked away with what they offered? Would you have fought back or taken the easy way out?